And you're live.
Oh, and I'm live. Hello there. Ugh. So I'm just gonna tidy up for a minute then.
You have 24 seconds till.
Oh, I should talk.
Okay, go ahead.
Are we ready for it? Hello. Welcome to the 5-in-1 Social Distancing Craft Project. I'm Alice, and this also happens to be my first Facebook Live video, so go easy on me. Just like everybody else, we've been hunkering down, eating 2 weeks worth of snacks in just 2 days, and watching the entirety of the Great British Baking Show. Okay, for the third time, don't judge me. I don't know about y'all, but I've been getting a little antsy, and I really need to get my hands doing something. So I was cleaning out some deep kitchen drawers, no judgment here, and I found a ton of old plastic bags just hanging out. And I was reminded of this awesome upcycling project from the old days, back when Social Club lived on donations, and we were really into making art with trash. So we thought it might be nice to have this little social club in exile and enjoy some interaction with other humans that aren't actually cats or Frank. The best part is we're pretty sure you'll already have everything you'll need to get to play and get crafty with us. All right, so the intro is down. Let's get into it. Today we're making what we call plastic bag fabric. It's a fun and silly project that we love and think you'll love too. I know. It sounds like a weird one. It kind of is. But what's so great about it is that after you've made a few sheets, you can use it to make bath floaties, wallets, whatever the hell this is. So this was one of the very first craft projects we taught way back in the beginning in our crosstown basement. You know the one, that weird hole in the ground under the old Cleveland Street flea market.
Okay, we're going to stop and you're going to put your microphone on. I'm going to start over.
Oh, nobody could hear me?
Oh,
Just some hands moving around?
yeah, pretty much.
Can they hear me now?
My name is Joe Biden.
Hi, Melba. Apparently nobody could hear anything that I was saying, but thank you for tuning in. We're gonna start over. Hello there. Welcome to the 5-in-1 Social Distancing Craft Project. I'm Alice, and this also happens to be my first Facebook Live video, so go easy. There might be a few snafus. Whoops. So just like everybody else these days, we've been hunkering down. We've eaten 2 weeks worth of snacks in just 2 days. And I've watched the entirety of the Great British Baking Show for the third time, y'all. It's so calming. So I don't know about you, but I am really getting a little antsy. And I really need to get my hands doing something. So I was cleaning out some deep drawers in my kitchen. No judgment here. And I found a ton of old plastic bags hanging out. I was reminded of this awesome upcycling project from the old days, back when Social Club lived on donations and we were really into making making art with trash, not trash with art. So anyway, we thought it'd be nice to have this little social club in exile and enjoy some time with other humans that aren't actually cats or Frank. The cool thing is we're pretty sure you're gonna have everything you need to get a chance to get to play and get crafty with us. All right, so the intro's down, let's get into it. Today we're making what we call plastic bag fabric. It's a fun and silly project that we love and we think you'll love too. I know. It sounds like a weird one. It kind of is. But what's so great about it is after you've made a few sheets, you can use it to make bath floaties or little wallets or whatever this is. So this was one of the very first craft projects that we taught way back in the beginning in our crosstown basement. You know, the one, the weird hole in the ground under the old Cleveland Street Flea Market. We spent a lot of time there researching fun projects to do with our friends and neighbors, and we found loads of cool pictures of what you could do with plastic bag fabric once you created it, but not so much in the way of instructions. Thanks, Pinterest. So, in accordance with our motto, we experimented and came up with a recipe that worked pretty well for us, and that's what we're going to share with you today. Okay, so here's what you need to get started. A crafting iron. Ooh, it's already turned on. Mine is very pretty. Yours doesn't have to be as pretty, but it doesn't hurt. If you use your good iron, make sure you clean it well afterwards, and I'll explain to you how to do that. You're gonna want plastic grocery bags, shopping bags, gift bags, mailer bags. The more colors, the better, and you'll see why soon. You'll want a nice pair of scissors, a flat surface to iron on. I'm just using a thick stack of newsprint on my craft table to protect it from the heat. You can use your ironing board if you'd like. Just make sure you protect it with some paper first. You're gonna need wax paper or parchment paper and markers, which are optional. If you are all set until you heard wax paper, don't worry. We have a nice little trick to show you. You can make your own with paper bags, newsprint, and a candle. Hang tight and we'll show you how. All right, are you ready for this? So, the first step is to prep our bags. So I've got a stack of bags here, and what I like to do is pull that bottom seam so it's nice and straight, and then give those handles a little tug. And I'm gonna trim that bottom seam from this bag, like so. Right, just cutting through all the layers. And then because I want a nice square piece in the end, I'm gonna also trim these handles. So now you should be able to open your bag up, and you can use it like this if you'd like. It can be real exciting and interesting to have the words layered in your plastic fabric, but I really like to kind of control that, so I'm going to cut all of that writing away. And unfortunately, on this Joanne bag, it's not actually going to leave me with a whole lot, because there is writing on the back too. So now I have one nice sheet. I'm going to put that aside. Let's see, here we've got another one. I'll just show you that again. And I like to go ahead and prep as many bags as I think I might use. So if I had a big stack, I might just do this to a bunch of them. But again, I flattened it out. I'm going to trim off this bottom seam because that's already been fused, so it's no good to us. And you can just throw those away. I'm going to trim the handles. Now I keep those because we'll use them later. And then you go ahead and open up your bag. And again, it's up to you. If you want to leave this in place, you can. If you want to cut it apart so that you just have the color of the plastic, you can do that too. I like to actually save these for later and use them in collage. So we're going to keep cutting our plastic bags until we have 10 layers of bags. So this is just 2 layers. If I make it smaller, now I have 4 layers, right? So we want 10 layers of bags. The real trick to this project is to get the plastic bags to fuse properly. You need at least 6 bags. I find that 10 or 12 bags is a whole lot better. Hi Melva. Hi Scott. Thanks for joining us. So here I have my plastic bags, and I just cut that big sheet into smaller sections so I can do a test. So this is 10 Michael's bags. They're lined up pretty good, I'm gonna kind of check our edges. Sometimes they stick together funny because of the static. Anywhere that there is not 10 layers, you are actually, it's not gonna fuse very well. So I might even trim this edge a little bit here and a little bit here. Now I'm using parchment paper to fuse this. You can use your homemade wax paper. I'm gonna do some fusing with our parchment paper and set our iron up, and then I'll show you how to make your own wax paper in case you don't have this parchment paper. What's nice about the parchment paper is that you can use it over and over and over again. You do wanna make sure that what you bought is genuine parchment paper. Some of this has a plastic coating, and that will definitely not work. It will fuse to your plastic bag fabric, and I think you might feel a little sad about that. So, I've got my iron set. This old iron says permanent press. It's about medium. I'm gonna use this iron dry. On newer irons that might be synthetics or silk, I think are the divisions that they have. But we wanna make sure that we start nice and slow to see how hot you need your iron to be. So we're gonna place that on the parchment, and then nice and slow, we're just gonna start ironing. Don't you love how all crafts seem to have some tie into chores? Ever notice that? Anybody out there iron their clothes? Not I. Nope. All right, so I've ironed a little bit on one side. It's not doing a lot yet, but I'm gonna flip it over because I would like this to be even. Oh jeez, it's very tight. And one way to ensure that your plastic fabric is evenly fused is to flip from both sides. So now I'm starting to see a little melty. You peel that up a little bit, we can start to see it starting to fuse together. So I'm gonna flip it over again. All right, this side is not so much. You can see it's still hanging pretty loose there. And a little bit of pressure. I don't like to sit in one place too long. The heat can completely melt your plastic bag. And our goal here is to fuse those layers together. So I'm feeling pretty good about the heat setting of my iron. I got a little ways to go, but you can see that some of this in here is fusing nicely. When you open it up, you'll see some areas are really not, you know, they haven't connected at all. So I'm gonna kind of focus on that for this next bit of ironing. I'm tempted to turn my iron up a little bit, but I think I'm just gonna use patience. Okay. And then again, I'm gonna flip it over and hit that same side. Using a little pressure. All right. So there you have it. There is some plastic bag fused fabric. This has a little ways to go before it's fully fused. So I want to show you some samples that I made earlier when you're doing your heat test. So this first one, whew, it melted so fast. I had this way too high. When you see these holes in your plastic bag fabric, I mean, it's fun and cool, and you might be able to do something really awesome with that, but it is melted. It's gone past fused. Your iron is too high. And then we have this guy, and I had a little bit of the same. So this could be, maybe turn your iron down. You see there's like a tiny little hole there. I'm not sure you can see it. So this is a situation where, you know, you might want to either turn your iron down, or maybe you want to move the iron across your plastic bags a little faster. This one is a really dang good piece. So this side is fully fused. And this side still has a little wrinkle left to it, which if you're going to further fuse your piece into a shape, it can be nice to have this. That will really help it fuse together. If you've completely melted your piece, as on this side, it can be tough to get those seams to work. So these pieces I think look pretty good. This is one, well, this one side is pretty good, but it's Facebook Live, right? So let's pretend that this is the one that I finished. All right, so I did say that I was going to show you how to make your own wax paper in case you don't have that at home. So also using some bags, we're gonna do a little bit more reusing of some materials. I have this candle. This is just a regular old paraffin candle. And I found a real good trick is to take your iron, and we might have to turn it up a little bit, turn that up to wool, so that is medium high on most irons, and I'm gonna go ahead and get that bag nice and warm. I'm gonna take my candle and I'm gonna rub it. You see how it's getting all greasy? So that wax is just melting right into that bag. And you just repeat that. All right, so I'm gonna go over it again, heat it up until the whole thing looks like it was filled with some delicious Memphis fried chicken. All right. And again, I'm gonna just smooth it out a little bit. You want to do that on both sides so you get a really good coat of the wax. Now this might be a point where some of you are asking, what about my nice iron, Alice, with all the wax you just put on it? So when you're done with this, when you're done using the wax in your iron, you can take a clean piece of newsprint. I'm using plain newsprint because that's what I had in the studio. But you can also use newspaper. Like you've got the flyer or something in your recycling, and you're just gonna run the iron until it's clean. It'll take all that wax off. All right, so that's how you're gonna make your own wax paper. And why would you need that, you might be asking. So once you have your pieces together, got this fun little fused piece, you can go ahead and make patterns for pouches, for wallets, for stuffies. So this little guy, I'm going to cut a template for a little pouch. So I'm going to use the wax paper inside of the plastic bags, like so. And the wax on that paper is going to keep the plastic from fusing in those places. So hopefully what I get when I put this back between my parchment paper, or more wax paper, if that's what you're using. And I'm going to hit that again with my iron. Let me turn that down. I'm on a short leash there. So now, this step is going to fuse it completely. So what you should see as you work is all those little wrinkles that were still present in that fabric as you fuse this final bit together should disappear on you. Now all plastic bags are different, y'all. They're different weights, they're different colors, of course, but the weight of the plastic can really make a difference in how they fuse. So when I work, I like to use all of the same type of bags for the centers. So all Dollar Tree bags or all Kroger bags, all of one brand. And that way I believe that I get a more even fusing. Okay, so that's pretty hot. But you can kind of see I'm getting a nice little seam there. I'm not going to push too hard until it cools. but you see I've created myself a nice little seam on each side. Now to get into some of these more complicated shapes, the next thing we're gonna delve into is just how you get this cool color. How do you get these cool, weird things, right? We were really into these little wallets. Can you tell? How fun is that? Okay, so for this bit, I'm gonna pull out my larger piece of parchment paper. I have already prepped my paper, my plastic bags. It's just gonna curl right up on me if I let go with it. All right, so I have prepped all these gray Michaels bags. And there are 10 of them. So I know that, and I know it's gonna fuse well because I just did that test. I'm gonna line them up, and I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but I'm gonna line them all up as best I can so that what I have here in the center bit is gonna be, we wanna make sure we have those 10. Sometimes I'll actually go ahead and trim at this point some of that excess so that I'm not disappointed. Again, if there's only 4 layers of the plastic bag in an area, it's never gonna fuse. You could iron until, you know, what do they say, you're blue in the face. Till your arm falls off. Yeah. So I'm just gonna trim that a little bit. It'll fit in my parchment paper better too. Okay. So that's a little more reasonable looking. So I'm gonna do 2 things to this fabric. The first is I have some markers. Markers are really fun. I'm using alcohol-based markers because you know they smell good. No, we're grown-ups, that's what we have. You can use whatever kind of markers you have. Water-based are totally fine too. So I got my colors and I'm just gonna make a fun pattern. So maybe some polka dots, because polka dots are fun to draw. Whew. How are y'all doing out there? What kind of crafty activities are you getting into? Anybody like to keep their hands busy while they watch the Netflix? All right. Ooh, that magenta's pretty. I'm into that. So some more polka dots. And you can take a long time doing this. It's actually really fun to color on the plastic bag because the color starts to blend a little bit like using a watercolor or an ink. Let's see, maybe some triangles. Okay, now I'm going to take a piece of white or clear plastic bag on top of that because that's really going to help my colors shine through. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot to put in some orange. What? You gotta have orange. It's the best color. You can fight me on that. All right. Very spontaneous. There we go. So I like to put you have to put something on another piece of plastic to protect your design. I like to use white or clear because I feel like that helps the color to really pop, which for me is important. If I put a gray piece on there, it might be a little bit darker. So I'm gonna smooth that all out. I got a little hole here, but I'm not gonna worry about that. And now I'm gonna put my other piece of parchment paper on top. Sandwich that sucker up, and I'm gonna try and flip it gracefully. This didn't go so gracefully earlier, so we'll see. Whew, not so bad. This parchment paper has been rolled up tight for a while. All right, so now we have the other side of our beautiful stack. Line it up a little bit there. And on this side, I'm gonna do something different. This is the other fun bits. So when we were cutting our bags apart earlier, I like to save the logos and the fronts and then use them for collage. So you have not just the logos, but all the fun words that you can use. So I have this from Michaels. Michaels would like us to make, and they would like us to shop. But I think I'm just gonna keep the make. You could even cut those letters apart and come up with some, random style letters. Let's see. Mop. Make and mop. All right. There's also the logos. I really like this one from the Dollar Tree. It's got some interesting parts. These green stripes are pretty great. This awesome one. Now, I didn't have a bunch of fun things with logos, but I did have some colors. So you can just take colors and use those. So here I have my tray of really fun plastic bags that I found. So I had a beautiful mailer, and some heavier bags in purple and brown. So this is a pouch that I just love this one. I love the way the color blends together using these yellow and blue bags. So we're gonna do a little something like that with these mailers. This is a different kind of plastic, so it is going to react a little bit differently when we fuse it, but I think you're going to love it. Now, which plastic you put on top is gonna determine which plastic you see. So this one, for instance, is two-sided. All right, now if you're also adding some other colors, we talked earlier about saving your handles. So one of the things that the handles are good for are just little pops of color in your design. So I'm gonna open that up and I'm gonna take out that seam. And I open it up and now I have this gray to work with, although boring since my background is gray. But I have these pretty yellow ones over here. And these are fun to just cut shapes out of. You can go real wacky and cut an elephant. Or, nothing wrong with keeping it simple. I'm gonna do some little triangles. Now at this point, I will often find myself having trouble because my hands get dry, and they're even drier than normal because I've washed them like 400 times today. So you might need a little hand lotion to help you with this placing, especially these thinner ones, kind of get away from you. So far, so good. Now this yellow is a much thinner plastic than our mailer bags, so I might want to use 2 to increase the color. All right, so I'm not feeling like this is the most magical, beautiful, anything that I've ever seen, but we're gonna go ahead and fuse it so you get an idea of what some of the different plastics will do together. So, just like on our marker side, we are going to cover this with either a clear or a white plastic bag. So I'm going to lay that down. And I want to be gentle so that the static doesn't make my stuff go everywhere. That went not so bad. Now I'm going to lay my, hey Suzanne, it is cool, right? All right, I'm going to lay my paper. Now this is my parchment paper again. I've got my iron, it's a little high, for making my wax paper. All right, and so this is a bigger piece, but it works exactly the same way. We're gonna go nice and slow, but not too slow because we don't wanna melt our fabric that we're making. And you can always come back over it. Now I'm sticking out a little bit on my parchment paper. I got a little sloppy, but I'm avoiding touching that with my iron. Oops, all right. Anybody wishing for a speed up button? So back and forth, kind of carefully making sure I'm getting all of it, kind of coming down to these edges. Oh, that started to move. So it'll shrink underneath you as you're working. Some of the bags will shrink much more dramatically than others. Don't be worried. If you start to see that happening, it happened here, you wanna kind of move away from it so that you can maintain the even shrinkage. So now I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm gonna do a little bit on the other side, and then I'm gonna check where we're at. So again, I have this iron set at medium high, but I did test it to make sure it wasn't just gonna make holes in my bag. Oh, it looks like it's going pretty good. So we're gonna take a little sneak peek. So he's fusing pretty good. We got a lot of action here in the center. If I flip it over, it's still not completely connected, but I've got some pretty good shrinking on this side too. So I'm back on that original side, and I'm just gonna keep working it until it gets more solidly fused. Now, like I was saying, you do wanna be careful that you're not overcooking it to make holes unless you're into that look. And if you're planning on taking this fabric and you're not just gonna make a flag for your porch or a kite, maybe, you want to leave it a little bit less fused so that there is still some melting action when it comes time to make that little pouch. All right, let's take another look. I think that's looking pretty good, right? And my white has really mellowed out that background gray. I would say you can see it's not completely. I'm about halfway through all those layers. I am tempted to turn that iron up. You know what happens then, ladies and gentlemen? Chaos. Okay, but just a smidge. There we go. So I am, because I turned it up, I am gonna move a little bit faster because I'm being risky. Anybody else have any clever things to do with plastic bags? No. All right. Well, so here you can see this one is coming along pretty nicely. I think I would probably still fuse it a little bit more if it were just going to be a sheet of fabric. Now you can see that some of these edges just didn't fuse, and that's never going to. There's only 2 layers of plastic here, so that's just never gonna make a good connection. So once I get a piece that's pretty well fused together and I'm digging it, and it's shrunk pretty evenly, you can go ahead and trim up those areas that are just never gonna fuse. All right, get rid of them. And these are all the places where our plastic was uneven and it just didn't meet. There just weren't those 6 layers that you need. And again, I use 10. 8 to 10 is better. Yeah, just get rid of all that. Right, and so we have this kind of weird collage with plastic bags, and this side is colored marker. Now I do have some finished pieces to show you. Ooh, it's getting a little messy in here. All right, I have some finished pieces to show you that I really love that we spent kind of more time on. So here's one. This looks like it was done on a Walmart and a Big Lots bag. So real bright colors. And then I don't think that there is a second piece of plastic on top of that. If you're using a craft iron, it really doesn't matter if you put another piece of plastic on top of there. So this is nice and bold and really greatly colored. You can see the difference with mine. With the plastic, it's a little more muted, for sure. That's a fun piece. Ooh, and look at this fun piece. So it's just Harbor Freight bags, looks like. How great is that pattern, right? Nice and evenly fused. And then I love these. They're so beautiful. Really into that. So this is some of that thicker bags. Some of that thicker, like mailer bags. And then with the regular kind of shopping bags underneath it. But look how fun that color and the texture is so great. And this is a really sturdy fabric, what you end up with. Yeah. So I did some little samples earlier. I really loved this. This is the Dollar Tree logo. Look how much this sucker shrunk. So you might get more shrinkage than you imagine from watching mine. Again, different bags are different weight plastic and they'll behave differently. But how fun is that little shape? And this would make a great little bookmark. You might find when you trim these, like I did when I was trimming this, that some of it's not quite fused, those edges. And you can just go back and hit those with an iron if you're gonna use it as a finished piece of plastic. Now, if I were gonna make this into a little pouch of some sort, I would want that to be not quite fused completely. That would really help me make that final seal. All right, so are you into figuring out how some of this weird stuff works? So this is a fun one to make stuffed animals. Earlier, we saved all those little plastic bits. And I used those for stuffing. So when we made, let's go back and look at our pouch. Remember when we made this pouch? We just folded it in half. It was pretty primitive. And then I ironed it a bunch. Oh, that seam is real good. I'm pulling on that. I could pull my wax paper out and now I have, well, I don't know, it's really a pouch, doesn't close. But I have this little container. Go ahead and trim your seams, make it all nice and tidy. So when doing something like this shape, you're gonna cut your circle a little bit larger than you want it. And then your pattern template for the inside, now this was just a simple square out of the wax paper. But for a stuffed animal, pillow like this. Ooh, there's my markers. There we go. What I'm gonna do is approximate that circle and then draw a tab. So let me see if I have some that are the right size for that. Not really. Let's do it with this guy. We'll make it smaller. And this is how you make kind of any of the patterns. This one is a little more maybe weird to think about. That's why I'm kind of showing you. This is the worst circle. I'll make it a little bit smaller. So my goal is to have, I don't know, about 3/4 of an inch of plastic to create seams around that circle. So now, when I fold that together and I squish it between my parchment paper, I seem to have lost my little sheets. when I put that between my parchment paper, and because it wasn't fully fused, there should be a little bit of wiggle room there to get a nice seam. And then the best part is that you can use all of those bits that you have cut off of the plastic thus far to stuff it with, and then it floats. Is that not cool? So again, I'm using a little bit of pressure to make sure that these seams will all fuse well together. Now, if your fabric has been solidly fused already, putting it together like this may not work. So if you have one that is very, very smooth, or if you see any tiny little holes in it, it might not fuse any further. But it's still a cool piece of fabric that you could use for other things. So this is one way to make pouches, by using your iron to fuse it together. You can also use your sewing machine, or you can hand stitch them if you're really adventurous. But if you happen to have a sewing machine, these can be really fun to sew too. So I'm going to flip it over. It's starting to fuse together. Go ahead and give it a little more pressure. I'm less worried about it melting at this stage because it is thicker. So once you get it completely fused, let me get in there, real close. Then you can trim it, and you're gonna pull this piece of parchment paper out, and it will leave a hole that you can use to stuff it. And that is how you get the stuffed shapes. I made these fun birds. Can you tell that's a Target eyeball? So I made these fun birds with the Target eyeball, and it's got a little hook on it so you can hang it on your Christmas tree. I mean, it's adorable, right? And weird. We did tell you it was gonna be weird. I mean, this is 5-in-1 Social Club, right? He's weird. But he floats, which is amazing. All right, and I'm dying to show you these little wallets, so let's hope this is fused enough that I can show you. Yeah, this looks good. So you can see once it's fully fused, it really starts to get nice and flat. Can you see that? It's real, oh, it's hot. It's real smooth, and you stop seeing those little wrinkles. So for instance, if we look at this one next to it that I did not have the patience to finish, you can see that it's still got a lot of wrinkles. Now he's not as fused as I might like. I would work on him a little bit longer so that I would get that nice round seam that I had cut all the way around. So there's a little bit up here, but I've kind of had enough of this part of the demo, right? I think you get the point. So I'm gonna slide my finger in there, and then this guy will just slide out, and I'm left with a pouch that I can stuff. And you can go ahead and use all those weird bits that we saved earlier, handles, things that aren't fun colors, just whatever scraps that have fallen on the floor, right? You can use those to stuff. There they are. I got a ton. Okay, stuff them in there. And then this next part is only mildly tricky, but we want to just hit that very edge with your iron. But it is underneath parchment paper, so that can make it a little tricky to hit your mark. But you're just gonna fuse along, a little more than 1/4 inch. You might wanna go 1/2 inch. If you're not sure how much that is, look at your thumbnail. That's 1/2 inch. I'm gonna use pressure again. At this point, I am not worried that I'm gonna melt that, but I do wanna make sure it's solidly fused. Hey, Katrina. All right, so that looks pretty great. I didn't get the best shape because I didn't iron it for long enough, but I can trim around. You see, I'm gonna leave a little bit of edge there I can trim around, and now I have, oh, he kind of looks like an owl, maybe. So the last thing I have to show you are these super fun little wallets that we made. So if you have a sewing machine, this can be really awesome. And this is just several pieces laid together and then cut to be the proper shape. So you cut 2 pieces like this, and then you fold them in half into the center along these lines, and then zigzag stitch the edges. And you end up with a really nice little water resistant wallet, a couple little pouches. This edge was fused a tiny bit before we stitched it. These edges, once you go through more than one piece of material, and again, this is 2 pieces of fused fabric being fused together, they don't always fuse perfectly. So going back with either a little hand stitch or a zigzag stitch here really completes the project. And you can see there's all sorts of fun things you can do with those markers on the colored bags. And I know I did tell you about, you know, sandwiching it in other colors, but you can see how these guys, where we did not sandwich it with another plastic bag, are really, really vibrant. The hard part of the collage, if you choose to leave the top bag off, is that the static will move things around, so it helps with that. But I think when you're coloring, just leave that top sheet off. Forget I said that. All right, well, do you guys have any questions? I'm gonna go and just see what oh, Michael, come help me. Hi. So I wrote this like tiny little thing to wrap us out. And I wanted to make sure that I had kind of told you everything you need to know. And I think I did. Yeah, I think we did. So anyway, thanks for joining us. This was fun. Go easy on me. It was my first time. I hope that you'll join us for the next one. Let's see, what's it say? It says some stuff. Yeah. All right, y'all. That was fun. Ah, there it goes. We have this fun little prompter. I was doing so well. Thanks, y'all. Anyway, that was fun. And that's a wrap for the first episode of 5-in-1 Social Distancing Club. I can't wait to see what you create. Be sure to share what you make with us on the social medias and below in the comments if that's how this works. Follow us on Facebook to hear when you should tune in for the next one. See y'all soon.